Buddy Holly knew he had a potential hit song with their re-recorded version of That'll Be the Day. But did you know that Buddy had to violate his contract with Decca Records and resort to subterfuge to get that record out so the world could hear it? I'm J.P. McDermott for West Coast Ramble, and this is the concluding chapter of the true tale of Buddy Holly's That'll Be the Day. If you enjoy this sort of thing, be sure to like and subscribe for more. They knew they had a potential hit record, but there was one huge problem that threatened to keep That'll Be the Day buried forever. Norman Petty and the band knew they had something special with their re-recorded version of That'll Be the Day. It was head and shoulders above the version that Buddy had cut in Nashville 7 months before. But in the couple of days following the session, those good feelings were replaced by concern. Buddy realized that he had a clause in his contract with Decca that prohibited him from re-recording and releasing any song that he'd already recorded for Decca, and he was bound to that clause for the next 5 years. While he was no longer a Decca recording artist, the great track they had just recorded could not legally be released. Buddy decided to call Decca and see if there was any way around this. He wound up talking to Paul Cohen, who you'll recall had called Buddy the biggest no talent he'd ever worked with. Amazingly, there is actually a recording of this call. Buddy tries to see if Decca will give him a release to re-record some of those songs he cut last summer, just in case he wanted to try and re-record them sometime in the future. Paul Cohen gets a whiff that something's up and lets Buddy know that there is no way he can release anything that he's already recorded for Decca. Buddy keeps up the pretense for several minutes, but the call ends with no relief for Buddy. Norman Petty, always thinking, comes up with a solution. If Buddy can't release the song, they'll just leave his name off the record. Rather than putting out a Buddy Holly record, they'll just release the song under the name of a group, figuring that Decca will never notice. Now they just needed a name. Naming groups after birds or insects was popular at the time. Buddy and Jerry liked a group called the Spiders, so they got out an encyclopedia and started going through the insects. J.I. later said that they considered the grasshoppers and the beetles for a minute before settling on the crickets. They liked the idea that crickets were a musical insect and that it made a happy sound. There's a popular story that they chose the name because you can hear a cricket on the end of one of their records. This is actually half true. You can hear a cricket chirping in time and in tune at the end of I'm Gonna Love You Too. But by the time they recorded that song, the band had already been called the Crickets for about 4 months. When we think of the group today, we think of Buddy Holly and the Crickets. While they were often billed that way on performances, there were no records released by Buddy Holly and the Crickets during Buddy's lifetime. They were either Buddy Holly records or Crickets records. One more last note about bass players. While Larry Wellborn is the bass player on That'll Be the Day, he was never officially a Cricket. Joe B. Malden, the 16-year-old bass player in Larry Wellborn's steady band, the Four Teens, was recruited by Buddy and J.I. for a pickup gig sometime in March 1957. On the drive home from the show, they asked him to join the band and promised that they'd be rich. Joe B. had heard it all before, but he agreed, signed the contracts, and officially became a Cricket. Now Norman Petty went to work, sending out the Clovis demo of That'll Be the Day under the name of the Crickets, with no mention of Buddy or his contractual obligations to Decca. In an interesting twist, that demo was picked up and released as a master on the Brunswick label, a subsidiary of Decca. So the world did get a chance to hear That'll Be the Day, and fell in love with Buddy Holly. Buddy was able to keep recording and putting out great records right up until his untimely death in that plane crash less than 2 years later. If not for Buddy's determination, desire, and skill, paired with the studio mastery of Norman Petty, plus a little bit of contractual violation and a fib or two, we might never have heard all that great music, and the world would be a poorer place. By the way, once That'll Be the Day was selling millions of copies for Brunswick, Decca pressed and released the Nashville version they'd been sitting on. I suspect the kids who bought that record were kind of surprised. I'm J.P. McDermott for West Coast Ramble. I hope you've enjoyed this exploration of That'll Be the Day. In the description below, you can find links to a YouTube playlist for all the songs I've mentioned here, as well as a bibliography of some of the sources I used in putting this together. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon with another edition of True Tales on West Coast Ramble.